Hi guys, I'm Neuser and today I have a really special guest on my channel. So without further ado, welcome to my channel, Iceycat.
Thank you.
So could you perhaps tell the viewers a bit about why you're actually here in the north of Sweden and able to participate on my channel?
Sure. I was invited out to help cover some events that were going on here in northern Sweden at a gaming convention. And we also had a chance to speak to some of the game developers that are at work here in the community of the northern Sweden area and the development things that they're working on, as well as speaking with fans of some of that and just hanging out and having a good time.
Yeah, and it's been great. We had this sort of live talk show with some other YouTubers, Swedish, kind of big names as well, and some Twitch streamers, so that was a lot of fun at a gaming event called Nordsken, which is actually celebrating geek culture, you might say. So we saw a lot of Star Wars and other cool stuff there as well.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're going to talk about today. Today we're actually going to talk about Operation Health, because we have both sort of covered that on our channels in videos, but we sort of feel it could be discussed a bit more. So to start with, what are your initial thoughts about Operation Health?
Well, Operation Health, I think, is something that's, on one hand, very much needed, but on the other hand is, I mean, if we're going to be honest, a bit of a disappointment. And so how do those things kind of live side by side? Well, first of all, it's really needed because, I mean, we've all experienced problems with the game disconnecting us, having bad hit registration, and whether you're part of an online community of Facebook or Twitter or the subreddit or the forums, I mean, you hear just everybody saying, Ubisoft, fix your servers. Well, that's what this is all about, is giving that better server stability and also kind of planning for the future expansion. You know, if they want to get up to 50 to 100 operators over the course of 5 to 10 years, however long the development of the game is, you've got to be able to support the infrastructure for that.
Yeah.
And where they're at now, they can't. So it's absolutely necessary. But it's also an incredible disappointment to not be able to use the new Hong Kong operators and the new map that comes with that, while we are eventually going to be able to use them. I think, for me personally, the biggest disappointment is the cancellation, the entire cancellation of the Polish map.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I mean, I feel that this is so important as well, but at the same time, I feel disappointed because of the lack of content and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that you and I were discussing the other day was, I mean, when it comes to the communication and information around this, it's sort of, it feels like there's something missing there. I was expecting this hub that they were talking about on the Rainbow Six Siege webpage, that would actually give us something more. But at this point, it almost doesn't even cover as much as the live stream coverage did.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting. If you read between the lines, you're able to tell. So they said that one-step matchmaking was going to come in 2.21, and then we would have the alpha packs in 2.22. And of course, if you follow their release schedules closely enough, you'll realize that a new season is always the 0.0. So they kind of said that 0.1 was going to be the matchmaking, and so it wasn't going to be right away. But when they put it on the screen, they just had, it looked like part 1 and part 2. And so people were thinking they were going to get that one-step matchmaking right away. Because again, technically they didn't say that it was going to come right out of the gate, but it did sort of look that way if you weren't paying especially close attention. And so I think that, as you were saying, the communication problem, a lot of people were upset when Operation Health was announced because it was just like, a week or two before the Hong Kong DLC was going to come out. Yeah. And so people were like, how long have you been sitting on this information? Why didn't you tell us sooner? And then they said, well, we're going to try to have greater transparency and communication coming forward. And then Operation Health dropped, and everybody's like, why didn't you tell us there was going to be no content except for like some menus and a rank reset? Yeah. And they're like, oh, sorry. And you're like, well, what happened to that greater communication and transparency going forward? It's kind of like they put it out there in fairness, but they sort of didn't address it either. So
yeah, because my feeling as well, and that's how I feel as a gamer, I'm supporting Ubisoft and I'm supporting the developers in doing this because I feel it's that important. But and my sense is that sort of support, many players actually feel that sort of support for the developers and for Ubisoft when it comes to the Operation Health season. But in the same way, we need, as a community, to get something back for keeping that support going, I guess.
Yeah.
Information, confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
how sure are you that this will actually work, that the game will actually be stable and good when this season is over? What do you think about that?
Well, and that's a hard question to answer, because how many times over the past year and a half that the game has been out have we gotten the patch notes for this upcoming patch, and it said, like, a complete lighting pass has been done, and now lighting effects won't be so bad. And then you play it, and you're like, no, still pretty bad, but you told me it was going to be better. Yeah. And then the next patch cycle, they'll say the same thing, or they'll say hit registration is going to be greatly improved. Then you play it, and you're kind of like, feels about the same. So, I mean, that's a very fair question, is like, how much should we expect for that? Because we've been kind of let down by some of these promises before about things that maybe would be getting changed, and then we get excited for, and then it's just not the impact we thought it would be. And to be fair, there could be an impact there, and there's just sort of a placebo effect where maybe we're not thinking it's as effective as it really is, and that's a little hard to measure. But, I mean, from what I understand, they're putting in completely new servers and going in for, like, a different type of infrastructure. And so I think that really should, I mean, we're talking about not just like software patches, but hardware changes. Yeah. So I think that should have some substantial impact.
How clear have they actually been with that? Because as just a part of the community, as a gamer, it's hard for me to know. I mean, you're working a bit closer to the dev teams, and you perhaps can see their passion and their work in a different way than we can. So that's what I'm thinking. Should we be able to see some more about the progress that they're making, and see some more information around that? I would personally really like that.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of that is a calculated risk on their part, because it's hard to make a lot of promises up front, and then if it doesn't get delivered on, then you're sort of held to an accountability. So by keeping things vague, that sort of protects them on that end. And from a business standpoint, that does make sense. But from an end user standpoint, us, the community, the people that play the game, we want to have those reassurances that, our expectations are going to be met. Yeah. So it's sort of this balancing act that they have, right? And I can say that it is also a balancing act on their end too, because they have to be practical, and I mean, they're a business and meet their requirements and things that they have to do. But the dev team is also super passionate about what they're doing. They don't want you to have bad hit registration. They don't want you to have disconnect errors and all these. They want you to have an awesome experience too. Yeah. So it's sort of like this balance of where do these two kind of priorities come together between what's practical and what they're passionate about. But I can tell you that the dev team, I've met quite a few of them, and I've been privileged enough to be in their studio and work alongside some of them for a little bit of time. And these guys, I mean, they're playing this game too, and it's just as much a part of their DNA to they work on it, but then they go play it and enjoy it. So they want that experience to be good.
So talking about balancing, as you say, we sort of perhaps could talk a bit about glass. What do you think about that?
Okay, so my thoughts on
don't get me started.
Yeah, right. And this is sort of a trend I've seen with other buffs and nerfs that have happened in the game, is where they will do something in response to a perception that something needs to be increased or decreased, and then they'll make that change. But then I feel like oftentimes they go too far with it, and then they have to kind of reel it back in a little bit. Yeah. So we saw that with things like with the shotgun nerfs, and then they became very underwhelming after they were overpowered. Or we saw that with Pulse, how people thought that his ability was kind of hard to use. So then they made him super effective, and then it was like, oh, that was too much, and then they needed to reel it back down a little bit. And there's many other examples like that we can point to in the game. I think what they've done with Glaz is one more example of that. So they gave him the thermal scope, and I think that was something that he sort of needed, because there wasn't much difference between looking down the sight with his ACOG versus looking down anybody else's ACOG, especially with a marksman rifle. So this helps him stand out from that a little bit. But then they realize, oh, now we've made him so powerful, so how do we sort of reel it back in? And rather than doing just a minor tweak to balance that, I think once again, they've sort of doubled down too hard. So what they're doing is making it essentially so that he will do 2 to 3 shots to kill instead of 1 to 2 shots. And then they are giving him a recoil penalty so that follow-up shots is harder to chain, rapid-fire shots together. I think that the recoil penalty is sort of a sweet spot that should be done. That's a good change. But I think taking your only dedicated sniper, I mean, that's what his ability is he is the sniper. and now you've given his weapon the same damage as Buck with the SR-25, or Twitch with her DMR, or Buck's Kamers, So now they're all sort of doing the same damage, but they're not snipers. But they have the same ACOG, so the magnification is the same, and they're now doing the same damage range, so you essentially have 4 characters that you can kind of do the same thing with. He has the edge with the thermal scope, but why put him in that same damage pool with those other characters?
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's like taking the sniper out of the sniper, in a sense. And I'm not saying that the thermal scope was the wrong thing to do, because, as you say, he needed something. But then again, adding more shots, decreasing his damage, I think also is the wrong way of doing it, because it feels like wrong for a sniper.
I think that the recoil change, as I said, was good.
Yeah.
Maybe not, definitely not do the damage adjustment, but what I'd like to see as maybe a second level of balance is also maybe make it have a longer ADS time. So that he's not so easily able to kind of aim down that sight quickly and get those snapshots, because your sniper should be more useful at longer range engagements. And what you get into trouble is he gets into medium to closer ranges, and he's still able to fire fast. So maybe if you made it have that delay. I mean, Blackbeard has that significant ADS time, and something like that might be more appropriate on Glaz than the damage nerf. So
what do you think about moving around grenades? Because from my perspective, anyway, moving around grenades could actually change a lot. I mean, if you perhaps pull away smoke grenades from one operator, or add frags, or add stun grenades, that could change a lot in the meta.
Sure. Well, I think it doesn't solve too much of the problem with Glaz specifically, because he's still going to carry his own. At least they haven't announced that will change. But, so when we talk about taking them off of Ash and Thermite and moving them instead onto Jackal and Fuse, what does that really do? They haven't, at least I haven't heard that they confirmed exactly what they're going to be doing with Thermite, but with Ash, she's going to be getting flashbangs instead of smokes. That is a little worrisome to me, because your aggressive players already tend to be Ash mains, Ash and Jaeger and those quick characters. So you already have people that are kind of running around quickly, and now you're going to give her flashbangs on top of it, so she's going to be able to, toss, 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 run in, and just, while everybody's stunned. That actually might make things a little more in favor of those rush plays, those aggressive blitzes. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, we will see. Is there anything else you would like to address before we sort of wrap this video up on Operation Health?
The only other thing I have to say about Operation Health is I'm just a little bit disappointed that they didn't give us any content to work with the beginning of the new season. While it is great to not have to look at that Velvet Shell splash screen again for another 3 months, and the rank reset is, of course, appreciated, there's nothing else there to really work with right now. And I realized that, like they were going to have the skins for the Hong Kong operators, so those should wait until the Hong Kong DLC comes out, and I get that. But in the meantime, maybe getting, at least some more uniforms, maybe some more elite skins, just some kind of maybe smaller tier DLC content, maybe things that were going to be released a little bit later, but maybe they could move up the release of those art assets now, might have been kind of a good call to make. And they will release some things over the course of this, but having something up front when it launched right away might have been a wiser move.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for doing this, Iceycat. It was a great honor for me and loads of fun. I'll be back in a few days again, and until then, I will keep being Neuser. Hej då!